goodbye. For a cancer patient, that word has two very different meanings. That's why when we've done everything we can, we do things nobody's done before.
I did it, Mom.
At the Christ Hospital Health Network, we collaborate with Dana-Farber Brigham Cancer Center to offer next-level care, developed by the world's best minds. Treatment that could change your odds, or maybe the world. The Christ Hospital Health Network, everything it takes.
The Pound This Podcast is brought to you by the Christ Hospital Health Network. This is the Pound This Podcast, episode 808, 3 Things You Need to Change Your Life.
I want to lose weight, but I don't know how to get started.
What should I meal prep every week?
How do I get those sweet booty gains?
Inspiration for your healthy lifestyle. The Pound This Podcast with Amanda Valentine.
Hello, friends. Thank you so much for listening to the Pound This Podcast. I am Amanda Valentine, and today we're going to discuss changing your life in realistic ways, in ways that will actually stick. So I've kind of boiled things down to 3 things that you're going to need to change your life. And this is also from my personal perspective. So these are my 3 things, being a person who has changed my life multiple times and in multiple ways. And I kind of think it kind of boils down to these 3 things, which I'm going to get into in a second. But talking about life changing, man, some things that have entered my life that has completely changed my life, especially in the past few years. One of them is Sarah and Team Fit With Me, who is an amazing health coach who has guided me through some really rough times since COVID. And so if you're looking for somebody to help guide you through some life changes, if you want to know more about nutrition, about exercise, you need an accountability buddy, you need somebody to work through your hormonal issues, or maybe you have some autoimmune disorders, then Sarah is your chick. She is absolutely amazing. She's virtual, so you can work with her anywhere. And yeah, she will definitely do a deep dive into everything about you, and you're going to learn about you a lot, and you're going to be held accountable to actually make those changes that you want to implement. So if you're looking for an amazing health coach, you can save 10% off of month 1 of all packages and plans when you go to teamfitwithme.com/poundthis. And speaking of nutrition, game changer for me in the past year has been Clean Eats. Clean Eats is all over the country. I specifically go to Clean Eats in Newport, Kentucky, and here in Cincinnati, they're also in Westchester. So no matter where you are in Cincinnati, there's probably a location closer to you, whether it's Newport or Westchester. And man, I mean, I've been a meal prepper for almost a decade, and I love meal prepping, but it's exhausting. It would give up my entire Sunday to cook and recipe creation and everything else. And for what I did was pretty repetitive. And I know a lot of feedback I got a lot of with my meal prep is like, oh my God, I can't eat the same thing every day, which is why Clean Eats is chef's kiss amazing, because all of their food is delicious. There's so much variety. It's amazing. Whether you do their fresh meals, which is what I do. I personally do 21 meals a week, or you can go in and get their frozen meals, or they have the cafe. But if you want to try the fresh meals, you don't have to do the 21 meals, whatever you do. But if you make an order online right now, use promo code POUNDTHIS, all one word, pound this, and you'll save 10% off of any online order when you go to Newport or Westchester. So if you've been hearing me talk about it, or you've been seeing me post about it on Instagram, and you're like, dang it, I just want to try it, then right now is the time. Just sign up, get some meals for the next week, use code POUNDTHIS, and save 10% off of any online order. So, I mean, just go, there's no obligation. You don't have to sign up for like a monthly thing or a weekly thing. Like, you just do it week by week. So go ahead, give it a try. It's a game changer, because eating healthy is not convenient, but Clean Eats makes it convenient, which is amazing. So all of the calories, all the macros, all the ingredients are all listed. They're all clean ingredients. Like, it's not like going and getting a lean cuisine. That's why I just really love them, especially those fresh meals, because they're made right there. They're doing all the meal prepping for you. So give it a shot. Or if you've tried it before and you want to try it again and you want to save some money, again, code POUNDTHIS when you make online order for Newport or Westchester to save 10% off of that online order. Now let's get to the top 3 things that I personally think that you need to change your life. And to kind of qualify this, especially if you're new here, because I've been kind of bad about doing episodes that are like all about me and where I'm at, because I am definitely in an influx point of my life. I would say it's either a midlife crisis or an existential crisis, but really I'm just kind of figuring myself out and my new goals. And I think that where it goes into what I'm going to say here. But for me, I looking back on my life I have just really completely changed my life and reinvented myself multiple times. And with that being said, the process is not easy and it can be really painful and unpleasant, but it's definitely worth it and it pays off. So, I mean, just even going back to my childhood, I didn't have the best of childhoods, and I'm going to just leave that pretty vague. We can get into that at another time, but it was a situation, like it was just something that I felt like wasn't right for me. And I got myself out of that, I put myself through college and took some really big risks and, entered a career that was really passionate. I was really passionate about, which at the time was radio broadcasting, to be on the air. And so I kind of reinvented from where I was growing up into this new person that really was very career driven. And I did that. And then, I mean, especially just thinking about the transition, I mean, we really made some huge reinvention of my life was becoming healthy. I had been obese since I was 6 years old. As long as I can remember, I yo-yo dieted all through my 20s. So I did every crash diet. I did all the things, and I would lose a bunch of weight and then gain it back and lose a bunch of weight and gain it back. You know how it goes. But really, with my New Year's resolution I made in 2012 to just live a life that felt more authentic to me. Like I was just so in my space where I was just like, this isn't me. This isn't who I am. Who do I want to be? Who do I want to show up as? And how do I make the changes to do that? And then going through some of those changes to losing 100 pounds by making things that felt good to me, not felt forced to me. I mean, really changed my life and altered my life to a point where at the end of 2019, I decided to make a career change based off of my health and wellness journey, which is another reinvention of myself, which I'm going through right now. I'm figuring out who I am, all based off of like new reinventions of things that I've done. So my top 3 things that I think that are needed to change your life, I mean, there's some subset things too, but I needed a catchy title for the podcast. Okay. So there's going to be more than 3. That's how this works. Okay. I need a catchy title. One is being self-awareness, which if you have listened to this podcast for a while, Sarah, self-awareness is something I preach a lot of. Number 2 is self-belief. And number 3 is patience. And I will say that I have been terrible at all of these. And that's where I'm not saying like, oh, it's just so easy to be patient. No, oh my God, I am not a patient person. And also I have spent a lot of my life not being self-aware. And I have spent, oh my God, almost all of my life not believing in myself. So I'm saying those things as a person who has really battled through them, but also have really seen how that has changed my life. And through this podcast, I mean, I've been doing this podcast over 5 years. I have met so many incredible people. And I would say that these things boil down to a lot of those people and their massive life changes and going after what they want and reinventing themselves. I mean, with self-awareness, it is. And it's like, just like I mentioned of me and my health journey, it was really taking stock of like, where am I right now? Am I happy? I'm not happy. Why? And again, that doesn't have to be attached to weight. That doesn't have to be attached to body image. It can be attached to anything of just really being self-aware for you, where you are, to really look at you and not what somebody else thinks that you should be or you think of how you should be, but really taking a look at you and being like, okay, if I'm not happy right now, why? What is it? What are my struggle points? And then realistically being like, well, who do I want to be? Not just go into mode of like, how do I fix it? Go into like, well, who do I want to be? Who do I want to show up as? Like what, actually like feels good. And that, I mean, that's a hard thing. That's the thing I'm working through right now. I've been doing a lot of meditation on is just like what actually brings me joy. By the PS, I'm going to be going off on tangents. So sorry, that's just who I am. But like, because that's in a space that I'm at right now Where before, looking into my health journey, where I'm like, who do I want to be? I'm like, I want to be that kind of person that just like goes out and hikes. Like, could I be her? Oh my God, wouldn't that be cool? And then like I totally became her, which was awesome. But like where I'm at now, I'm also just thinking of like what truly brings me joy, and what brings me joy in this moment as 40-year-old Amanda versus what brought me joy as 35-year-old Amanda or 30-year-old Amanda or 25-year-old Amanda. I feel like I keep getting stuck in the past. So really being self-aware to like who I am right now and what really brings me joy. And then how do I incorporate more of that into my life? And how do I want to show up moving forward from this point on? And I will say it is difficult, but I mean, if you want to change your life in some sort of way, you're going to have to look at the difficult things. Like if you want to change your financial situation, you're going to have to do the yuck of like going through your budget and looking at how much money you spend on dumb crap. And I will say, like, I hate that stuff. And I don't want to deal with that either. But it's like, those things are necessary. Like you have to look at the status quo. You have to be self-aware of what you do, just how do you numb out? What are your trigger points? What do you actually really like? What actually motivates you as a person? Self-awareness is so key. And it's crazy how so many of us, myself included, can just go on to autopilot. Just like, I'm just going to do it. I just got to get through today. Today was really hard. I'll deal with this stuff tomorrow. And then you just do that every single day. And at some point, like if you really want to change, you're just going to have to stop and look at the ugly things and then be like, okay, how do I really start changing this? So self-awareness is just huge. I mean, every part of my journey, it's self-awareness came back to it. And I think it's just because I was so clocked out on my own self for so long to actually, when I really sat down and took a hard look at me, is when things actually changed for me. After spending like my whole life with thinking I wanted to lose weight and do all these things and it never really worked. It's because I wasn't really digging deep for what I wanted it for. I just was like looking for love and admiration because I thought I would get that if I was in a smaller body. But that's not really what I wanted. You know what I mean? So, I mean, it's hard. And I'm not going to say this is easy. It's hard, again, but it's worth it. And then self-belief, man, still working hard on this. The past several years, I've been hard on the self-love train because I have been and continue to be very mean to myself. I have definitely eased up. And it's so funny because before I started recording this, I wanted to go back and look through some of my journals. And looking through some of the stuff that I was like writing down, specifically in 2020 and early 2021, I'm like, dang, this is dark and very mean to myself. I mean, that's not that long ago. You know what I mean? This wasn't something that was a decade ago. This was something that was just a couple years ago. And just even seeing now where I'm at in this present moment, time of recording this, I'm like, wow, I've really worked myself out of that a lot. And it's really just believing in myself more of, and being a coach where I was, a health coach and a personal trainer and working with people for the past couple of years. That was just something that I had a discussion with multiple people about because it was like, I've tried this before and I failed and I'm going to fail again. I'm no good at this. And I'm like, well, immediately you are going to fail if you tell yourself that you are, because you're not believing in yourself. And I know that sounds like so like, I don't know, Instagram inspirational message meme, but I mean, it's absolutely true. And I will say that as a person who has lived through it and continues to live through it, things flow better and actually change the way you want them to when you actually believe yourself and think that you can do it, because you can, because you're a badass. I mean, you really are. If you're listening to this and you're doubting that you're a badass, knock it off. I mean, you absolutely are. That being said, from a person who's really had to do a lot of work to actually believe that about myself. And I could list out all the accomplishments that I've had. And I've done some really crazy stuff in my life and some really big things, especially now that I'm divorced and dating and trying to like explain myself like on dates. I'm like, damn, I've done some cool stuff. I'm not sure if you're worthy here, dude. So So of like, wow, like really kind of taking stock in sort of those things of like, why do I tell myself that I suck or I'm not good enough? Or I like, yeah, I can't hold a candle to other people. I'm like, no, like I totally am. And those accomplishments came because, again, I was self-aware of like, what do I want? And I'm just going to go after it. I'm going to push past my fear and let's go. And that was the thing I didn't make on the list, is just also pushing past fear. Man, it is so hard. It is so hard. Like, but I try to live by, if it makes me feel like I want to throw up, it means I should do it. And I would say the best things came on the other side of that, of just doing real scary stuff. I mean, I left a very solid, good career to start my own company without knowing a global pandemic was going to happen 2 months later. You know, and here I am over 3 years in, still figuring it out, but I don't have regrets. But I mean, I made a big, scary jump, and I've done that a lot of times. And it's just like, or even just, you know, I'm going to try to run a half marathon. Like, oh my God, what am I doing as a person who took extra band classes to avoid gym for like my entire school career? Like, who is this person? But I'm like, I don't know unless I try. And I believe that like I can do it. I've seen in the past that I've decided to make some changes, and I did, even if they were just super small. Like the example I use a lot of times is just like when I first started my weight loss journey on this round of it in the past like decade, of I knew I wasn't eating any vegetables and it wasn't anything I found pleasurable. So I'm like, well, I'm going to eat stir fry because I like stir fry. I mean, I put a butt ton of teriyaki sauce on it. I mean, it's delicious. But it got me to eat vegetables. And then I continued to eat vegetables and then find new ways to like vegetables. So I'm like, that's a small move. But it truly was life-changing. So it was one of those things where I can look back on that and be like, wow, if I can make that change, what else can I do? And actually believe that I can do it. And, you know, having that sort of, you know, keeping promises to yourself is where confidence is built. So even the tiniest thing of like, I'm just going to have 1 cup of coffee today, or I am going to, I don't know, dance in the shower today. And I'm going to make sure I dance in the shower every day to kind of get my mood up. And you do it, you're just like, you know, you're taking care of yourself and you are believing that you can and you can stick to it. And I mean, those things seem minor or they can seem very daunting, but they're truly life-changing. And then the patience that goes through with those things of like, hey, me switching to just eating stir fry versus McDonald's, even though it may have been the same calorie count, honestly, with how much like teriyaki sauce I was putting on it and everything else, that I mean, like it doesn't mean 100 pounds are going to fall off overnight. And they didn't. I mean, it took me 2.5 years to lose 100 pounds. Where before I would lose 60 pounds in 6 months, but in the most unrealistic, unsustainable way, because I was impatient. I want this gone now. I want to be a hot bitch right now. And then inevitably it doesn't last because I didn't have the patience to really learn what brings me joy and how to go through those like real life-changing processes. So, and that's a part I'm really bad at. I'm such an impatient person. I'm trying to get better. I'm trying to get better and be like, everything happens like when it's supposed to on its own timeline. And, you know, woo-woo-y, you know, lighting some sage on fire and petting my crystals and all that crap. But like, I really feel like even though as hard as that is for me and as hard as the other ones are for me too, like it works. So, I mean, that's where it's like, you know, you can see the flashy title of the 3 things that are going to change your life. And it could be like 10 minutes of exercise every day and eat a vegetable at every meal and meditate every day. And it's these like little tasky to-do list things. And those will definitely help because you should have some goals in there to work towards, some small steps. But ultimately, it's the deeper root causes of everything that's going to make the real change into changing your life in multiple ways, not just on a health journey, but in any sort of journey, again, like financial journey or looking for a relationship or whatever those things are. It's going to boil down to you, self-awareness. What do you want? Who are you? Who do you want to be? And how do you make that happen? Because you can, and then I'm really bad too about asking 1,000 people for advice, but ultimately it just comes down to me, and I'm not going to say it's a bad thing to ask for advice, but it's like, it's easy to just have somebody else tell you what to do rather than to just really deeply look at yourself and see what you should do. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? And then just like this self-belief thing, like, again, you're not going to accomplish it if you don't believe you can. If you're just like, oh, I could never lose weight, I never tried. Well, then you're going to continue to not, because you told yourself that you don't. You told yourself that you're not that person. You told yourself that you don't believe in you. So you won't. And I know, like, it's easier said than done, and you can understand the concept, right? But to actually live it is a different thing. But it is truly life-changing. Like, yes, you can. You can. If you don't believe in you, just listen to me again. Like, you're a badass. You absolutely can. Is it going to happen tomorrow? Probably not. Could it happen within 2 years? Yeah. And we will never, ever, 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 ever happen the way you think it's going to. It's not linear, which is also very frustrating, because it's easier just to, you want to follow a track, right? You want to have like your activity counter and your Fitbit, and you want to have your MyFitnessPal, and you want to like watch the numbers and go the way that you want them to. That's not how it works. It's very frustrating. It makes it real easy to quit. Makes it real easy to give yourself the excuse to quit. But then it comes back to you. Are you going to take the excuse? Sometimes you will. Sure you will. I have. But then what brings you back? You know what I mean? And that's where, if it's like, ultimately, for me, when I go off of the track of where I want to be, or, you know, I'm like such a good example for me is I feel so much better when I don't eat gluten. Like, I do. I have less brain fog. I feel less like a beach ball. Like, it really does affect me. I don't know if I have like celiac or anything like that. I know I have Hashimoto's disease, but like, I know I truly feel better. But then ultimately I'll still just freaking eat gluten. I'm like, I just like can't help myself. So it's one of those things of like, but I can't just be like, give up on myself forever. It's something that I have to realize, like, why do I do that? And how do I feel when I make that choice? Maybe I can just make that choice less. You know what I mean? Of like, it doesn't have to be perfect, but could I make it better? And I think that, you know, I've been so all or nothing for so long, and I know that so many other people are too, that it's hard to bounce out of that all or nothing mindset. So it's hard to make those little choices, and then you go off track where it's really easy to be like, whatever now we're gonna ride the margarita train forever. But like, it's, you know, it's really comes back to like, am I going back to feeling like this isn't authentically me? This isn't the life I want to live. Well, then, yeah, I got to stay on the track that I said I would, because I want to live that life for me. And so I think that's all just what it comes down to. And I mean, it is, and that's where I'm like, I just want to completely be raw and honest. It is so hard. It's just really hard. But for me, I'd rather go through the heart of that and live closer to a life that like feels like I'm living. It's really important for me anyway. In my life, I just want to feel like I absorb everything out of this life. I know that it could end at any minute. Like, it's just, you know, it's really scary. I saw some people that were friends in another life that I haven't, you know, been close with at all in a very long time. But I saw on a social media post that they just lost their daughter, which is just so incredibly heartbreaking. It's just so heartbreaking. And it's just like, man, life is so fragile. It is. It's just like, it is not promised to us or anyone around us. And how can we live in our life and, you know, more, you know, kindness to everyone else and ourselves? And how do we show up for this life? Because it can be taken away in an instant, and not to be like dark about it, but to really be light about it. Of like, if you're not living the way that you want to live right now, like, what can you do? Even if it's the smallest thing, to just like, again, like, go buy yourself flowers, which PS, I didn't even know that. I have not even heard that Miley Cyrus song. I didn't know that was a thing until I like bought flowers for myself, and everybody's like, oh, it's like that song. And I'm like, oh, I am so old and out of like touch. I'm like, I'm over here listening to Steely Dan. I am such a grandma with my yacht rock. But like, you know what I mean? It's like, man, I mean, especially going through COVID, like you just never know what's going to happen. And for me, in my life, I'm like, I just really want to be able to do the most that I can with this time that I have here. And that's personally important to me. And so I don't want to put that on anybody else to live that, but it's one of those things where it's easy just to kind of coast and not even think about how fragile this life is until you see it taken away from some, people within your life. And it's like, wow, I don't know. It's really crazy. And so I think it's just a good time to like appreciate what you have and appreciate everyone around you, and to, again, really take stock of what you want or what you would like to be, and not expect perfection out of it, but to be like, man, I'm lucky to have today. I'm here today. How do I make the most of it? Which isn't always easy to do, especially when like stress happens and drama and bills to pay and prices going up and road rage and everything else. It is very hard to kind of have that, more idealistic, I guess, approach on life. But man, if you just like, that's what I try to do every morning. I wake up extra early just so I can have like a half hour of quiet, even though I don't have kids. And I know a lot of people that do have kids try to do that, to just drink my coffee and really kind of like look at the day. And then for me, just being like, man, this day could go off the rails and go sideways. But like in this moment, I really want to try to like appreciate and like even just kind of see the appreciation in the bad of like, at least I get to experience it. It's, I'm here to feel it in some sort of way. Obviously, like a lot of things are really terrible and you don't want to experience them, but you know what I mean? So not to go off on that little soapbox. I told you I was going to go off on tangents, but for me, that's what's really important. And that's what started my weight loss journey too. It's just so much of like, I didn't want to live the rest of my life living the way I was living it in that current time. And if I'm here, if I get to be here today, how do I want to show up for myself and for others? And that was truly life-changing. And it was, and speaking of that too, just like even at that time when I first started losing weight, like in 2012, I had some friends that were having a very heated conversation with me about like why I wanted to lose weight and why I couldn't be happy in my current body and I should just love myself in that body. And I'm like, man, I wish I did. I really wish I did. But I didn't. And I didn't have that self-love for myself at that point. And that's where I'm like, I'm making changes that I can because that's what I do want to feel. And I'm not saying that nobody else can't feel that way. God, I wish I did. Oh man, I wish that I could have found that self-love where I was in that point in time. And it wasn't just all tied into weight loss. It was it was just like me keeping promises to myself and actually making changes. And man, I went from like never going outside to like doing a Couch to 5K podcast and like running 5Ks. Like at the time, like to me, that was like insane. And it wasn't just tied into losing weight. It was just like, holy crap. Like, who is this person? Like, it's fun being this person. I love this. So that made me love myself more through the process of going through everything. So I don't know, that was just a conversation that struck me in a lot of ways too, where it's like, I know that there is so much talk about self-love and loving the body that you're in. And I think it's fantastic if you do. God, that's awesome. I mean, it's really awesome. And I try to do that every day in this body that I'm in right now, no matter what the size it is. But the thing is like, if you don't feel okay in it, that's okay too. And you're allowed to change. If you're unhappy with yourself for any sorts of reasons, like you can try to like change the way that makes you feel. If you feel like you spend too much money and you feel like on a spiral because you're barely paying your bills every month, like it's okay to try to change that. It's okay to like hire somebody to help you. Like it's okay to make changes if you're unhappy with certain things in your life. And that's where I hope this podcast is helpful with everybody that I've had on this podcast in the past 5 years. I hope that you find somebody that you're hearing this and it's like, man, this person could help me find some solutions, and myself included. You know what I mean? So it's important to, everyone has a different journey. Everyone has a different story. Everyone has a different why. And I hope that, at least I could play some role in your life by listening to this, that maybe I could bring somebody to your attention or somebody into your life. I love when people let me know that they've found a coach or found something inspirational because they've listened to this podcast. It's so insane. I love it so freaking much because I feel like so much of my journey was alone. I did have a support system, but nobody really understood what I was going through. And I really didn't have any sources to be I trust somebody to lead me to the right people that are going to help me. Everybody's trying to just sell you crap. And how do you just sift through the people that are just trying to make a buck off of you? That's so hard. And even right now, I was just having a conversation with a friend yesterday about hiring a business coach. And we're both looking to hire a business coach. And it was just but how do you trust who's actually good and who's just scamming you because they're just making a TikTok account or they're making an Instagram account? It's hard. It's not only is it all the hard things of you trying to figure out all this stuff about yourself, but then when you're actually looking for someone to help you, how do you sift through people that are just looking to take advantage of you, which is so gross, right? Myself included, I don't want to invest in someone and it just turns out that they just were looking for social media clout and they were just looking to make a buck and I didn't actually get any real help. So that's what, I'm hoping this podcast can be a resource for so many reasons. And I hope that it helps you in some sort of way, or if you've gotten this far through through this episode, that just even hearing the things that I've talked about may have given you a different perspective, or may have introduced you to, Sarah and Team Fit with me as a health coach, or Clean Eats as, an easier, more convenient way to just eat a little bit healthier, or to have more of a routine around your meals. So, or just to have some more confidence in yourself, or to understand, to have more patience, or to believe in yourself from hearing this conversation. I just think that stuff is really important. And I appreciate you listening so much. Really. And I know whenever I do these solo episodes, I always end it this way where I'm just oh my God, I love you guys. But I really mean it. And, I really want to be better about sharing more about my own journey, because the past 3 years have been the biggest growth years of my entire life. And it has been struggle bus and hard. And it's just a lot of really hard lessons. And just even, I told you before recording this, looking at some of my journals from 2020, I'm dang, how much self-work I've done to get to that point. And just even though I've spent so much time, working on my physical health, I'm working on nutrition and working on, exercise, and then becoming a personal trainer and a nutritionist. I feel the past 3 years for me have been so mental health focused, and I've gotten a lot of PRs in my mental health and dealing with myself and understanding my own patterns and, the things that, how I show up and how I don't want to. And that really played into just even a lot of my divorce conversations in relationships, where I'm I know I used to show up this way, and he was never expressed to me don't be that way anymore. But for me, I'm that's not okay with me. I don't like who I was in this relationship, and I wanted to change for me and for you. And I think, that's really, really hard work. Again, looking at the yuck of God, this is my behavior, and I don't like this version of me, and that has to change. And how do I actually change that? And so that's why I just feel man, who I am now as a person is drastically different than who I was in 2019. And that's not just COVID. I think that we've all changed through COVID, obviously, but it's been a lot of, I've cried a lot on the bathroom floor, specifically the shower, of being just really taking hard looks at who am I and what I do and do not like about myself. And am I okay with that? And do I want to change? And what that changing looks like and how do I actually change some of that behavior. And it's hard. It's real hard. So you're not alone in this at all. I'm right there with you in my own ways, and the journey continues, because as long as you get to wake up every day and you're here, you're on the journey, and it's every day is a new adventure, good or bad. So I'm glad that we're all on the journey together. And I'm so appreciative that you listen to this podcast. If you ever want to reach out to me, ask a question, anything, I would honestly really love to hear from you. If I don't write you back, it's because it like slipped through the cracks somehow. So like, but I do like honestly try to like have a conversation with everybody that reaches out. But my email address is amanda@amandavalentinebites.com. You can find me on Instagram at You Can Pound This. Again, like DMs, like sometimes they go to like those other folders or whatever, and I don't see them. So don't think that I'm ignoring you, but if you want to hit me up there, would love to have a conversation. Or if you have like questions, you want realistic reviews of things, like I'd be happy to answer any questions, or anything that you're going through, or just any feedback. Like, I wish you talked to this person on your podcast, or I would like for you to cover this topic. Like I listen to those things and I actually try to make them happen if that's going to be helpful. So, I know it's hard as a podcast because it's very one-sided. I don't know who's listening to me, and you're listening in your own space. And obviously we're not face to face. So, and it's hard to just be like, I don't know this person, let me email them. But like, feedback for me is super helpful, because not only do I do this podcast for me, but I obviously do it to help other people who are on a journey as well. So I just want to help in the best ways that I'm able to. So again, Amanda@AmandaValentineBites.com. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you later.
AmandaValentineBites.com.